Good afternoon, everybody. While everybody gets settled, you get to listen to me do all of the housekeeping and welcome and fun stuff like that. My name is Kristen Cordero. I am the Deputy Director of Business Services at the Department of State under Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea. I'm joined here by my director, Director Maureen Ewing. And we will be managing today's session. We will be with you through all three sessions, especially monitoring the chat, making sure you get what you need. So to that end, like I said, just a couple housekeeping items. First, I just want you to let you know, over the past few years here in the Business Services Division, we've made it one of our many missions to start serving the nonprofit community specifically, to create resources for you that are targeted to your needs, to make sure that you have the tools you need to plan for success, to make it easy to register, and then to find the tools that already exist out there or to help us develop new tools to make your entity healthy, to grow and to thrive here in Rhode Island, which is what we're all looking for. Okay, all sessions, all three sessions, today, tomorrow, and Thursday, are going to be recorded. We're all recording right now. Even if you just registered for one session, you will get a copy of the recordings of all three sessions. So no need to worry, they will be coming your way. Probably by the time we get them all aggregated and posted, it'll be early next week, but everyone who registers at any point during this series, you will get a copy of the recordings. There are no PowerPoints that we're going to be using. We're going to be doing a lot of live presentations today. I'll be showing you portions of our website live. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So there aren't going to be any PowerPoints coming your way, but about an hour ago, you should have received a reminder email about coming to visit us today with a copy of the resource guide, a digital resource guide that's accompanying this series. If for whatever reason you did not get that, you are welcome to email us. I'm going to put that email address in the chat right now, but you can email us at biztraining@sos.ri.gov. We'll make sure you get a copy of that. I think Maureen's also going to put a PDF copy in the chat for anyone to download if you deleted that email immediately and forgot about it. You don't need to follow along with that resource guide as we go, but I'm hoping that because it's divided up thematically per session, it'll help sort of make the presentations today, because we're limited to about an hour, a bit more robust, to give you more resources to look through and to hopefully inspire you to ask more questions as we go. Closed captioning is available if you would like to use it. So all you have to do is click the little CC live transcript button on the top or the bottom of your screen, and you'll be able to set your settings and make sure that you get the closed captioning service there. Finally, the chat box is your friend for today and for the remaining two sessions. Like I said, we're going to try to make this as interactive as we can. The only or the best way that we can do that is to use a chat, right? I can't have everybody unmute because we will never get to the end of this session. We'll all be talking over each other. I'm sorry you have to listen to me talk for an hour, but that's the way it has to go, unfortunately, in Zoom land. But please use the chat box. We're going to be monitoring it the whole time today, the whole time tomorrow, the whole time on Thursday. We will make sure that you're getting answers to your questions. Today in particular, I'm going to answer as many of them out loud as I can, but whatever you're asking, we will make sure we get you an answer. So please feel free to use that chat box. Okay, just a very quick rundown on what this series is going to look like so that everybody knows what to expect. Today is entity basics. Like I said, you're going to be listening to me. Sorry about that in advance. I'm going to walk you through a few of the many resources that we've already developed for nonprofits, whether you are dreaming of starting a nonprofit at some point, whether you've registered a new nonprofit recently, whether you've just joined the board of an existing nonprofit, whether you're looking to just get involved in the nonprofit community in some way, shape, or form as a volunteer, a skilled volunteer, you want to join a board or a committee. We've got lots of stuff to help you. And we're hopeful that we can point you in all of the right directions today. In particular, today we're going to learn about the legal requirements for the entity, a nonprofit. So what it means, what you have to do in order to get that entity registered and to make it actually exist in the legal world. Tomorrow, which is the same time, same place, we're going to be here at the same Zoom link from 12 to 1 tomorrow. We're going to be joined by Nancy Mancini, who I think is with us today. She's a fantastic CPA who is going to be talking about everything accounting and finances. So she's going to be walking everybody through what tax exemption at the federal level looks like, all the sorts of ins and outs of that, what it looks like to maintain that tax exemption. Other sort of accounting tips that are valuable to nonprofits of all shapes and sizes. And then the final session is, in my opinion, pretty cool. We're going to be talking all about fundraising. So we're going to start with just, again, some of those basics, things that you have to do if you're fundraising, some of the restrictions and the requirements on that, when you have to register as a charitable organization, how you obtain the use of a professional fundraiser. If you're running games like bingo and raffle, what that looks like and what you should do for those. Then the latter half of that session, we have invited representatives from a bunch of wonderful nonprofit support organizations in the state to talk about what they do, the resources they offer, some really cool workshops on capacity building and leadership, other sorts of webinars that you can join or watch pre-recorded. Written resources, people that you can contact for help if you're looking for one-on-one mentoring, and on and on and on. Not to spend all our time talking about what we will be doing. Finally, whether you are listening live or you're listening to the recording after the fact, we hope you learn a lot today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Hopefully there's something in this series or some things in this series that will speak to you. But most of all, we want to make sure that you know that you can come to us. We are here to help. We want to know how we can help you. So we want every organization that's represented on this call to have a fair chance at being one of Rhode Island's many nonprofit success stories. If there is a way we can help you do that, whether by compiling resources, creating resources, just being a office that will pick up the phone when you call, we want to do that for you. So without further ado, I kept that under 10 minutes. I'm very proud of myself. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what today's session is all about. So I'm going to share my screen now. You should be seeing in just a moment the Secretary of State's website. So this is sos.ri.gov. Everything I'm going to be talking to you about today is available on this website. We're specifically going to be in the business services section. And of course, in the business services section, we're going to be focused on the nonprofit section. But before we get there, there's a couple sort of basic things that I want to go over with you to make sure that you are aware of. And let me make sure I have this chat open so I can watch for everybody asking me lots of questions. So this first thing up here is a big alert. This is a very specific alert about a scam that is going around, and it includes nonprofits. So there is a company called RI Certificate Service. They are sending out very official looking notices to new business entities, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit entities. They're telling you that you have to pay $85 to get a certificate of good standing from our office to complete your registration. None of that is true. While you can get a certificate of good standing from our office, it's $5 for nonprofits, but you only need that document in really specific situations. So I'm glad, Mark, that you haven't hopefully sent in a check yet. If you just got it today, we are trying to make people aware. Thank you. So please don't rip it up, shred it. We're trying to make people aware that this specific scam exists, but to that end, lots of these scams exist. So one of the messages that we have for you, either as an executive director or a board member or somebody who's looking to incorporate a new nonprofit, is just like your personal identity, you try to protect it as much as possible, right? Everybody's getting pretty good at looking for scam emails and making sure that the things that you're responding to with your personal information and your personal money are legitimate. The same should be said for your business or nonprofit. They fall victim to scams and identity theft at the same rate that individuals do, with the same tools, by making their notices look official, by putting artificial deadlines on there and scaring you into thinking that you missed some sort of deadline. If you get something and you're not sure it's legitimate, please reach out to us. We will help you figure out if it is or if it isn't, if it's something you should look into, if it's something you should throw in the shred bin, and make sure that no money ever leaves your hands toward that company. Okay, get off my soapbox on that. The next thing I want to show you are these two buttons here. The first is this File Online button. I'm showing you this because I want you to know that pretty much everything that you can file with our office, all of those administrative documents throughout the life of your nonprofit, you can file online. So our doors are currently closed to walk-in services. The lobby's still open. We're still here and working and accepting paperwork, but filing online is going to be the fastest way to get something over to us. And right now, the safest way too. There's no face-to-face contact, and it's a little more convenient for you as well. Also, this Search the Corporate database. I want to point this out because everything you file with us, no matter what it is immediately available once it's processed for free 24/7 in this corporate database. So if you file something with us and you're wondering whether it was filed, you can always find it here. You can download a copy of it for free and keep it with your records if you prefer to have paper records. That said, you should also note that everything that's filed with us, no matter what it is available for free 24/7, which means it's not just you who has access to it. So if you're putting your personal information there, like your home address for whatever reason, you're absolutely welcome to do that. It's legal to do that. You should just be aware that anything you provide to us will be public information. The two other things I want to show you here is this event calendar here. My session today is going to be a little bit shortened version of a training that I give monthly called Nonprofit Basics. And the reason it's shortened is because we have longer sessions attached to it and I only have an hour. So I can talk for days about this stuff, and I will if you let me. So if you're interested in learning more, or you want to have a little bit more face-to-face chat with us, you want to have some more intimate questions answered about your entity, you can sign up for any of those monthly workshops. It's also how you would get to longer form sessions like this for Nonprofit Bootcamp. If you have friends or relatives or members of your nonprofit, or folks you know who would be interested in something like this, you can always send them to that training calendar, and that's how they can get into any of our events, which are always free and currently always virtual until we can do other things in the future. And finally, I just want everyone to know how you can get in touch with us, because we would like you to get in touch with us when you need us. I mentioned that we have humans answering the phone, and that is true. If you call us at this number here, 222-3040, we have dedicated staff whose role here is to answer the phone, to help people navigate the website, to help them find resources that are useful for them. Please give us a call if you have a question. If you prefer, you can email us at corporations@sos.ri.gov. We also have staff constantly monitoring that email address, and we're happy to help you there. And then finally, this is where we are located at West River Street in Providence. We're right over near the big post office building on Charles Street. However, like I said, at the current moment, at least until the COVID numbers go down and we're no longer at a high transmission rate, our doors are closed to walk-in services. Okay, we are moving on. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm just going to keep steamrolling through. We're going to look at the information we have for nonprofit corporations, because that's probably what everybody's interested in today. I would hope, if you signed up for Nonprofit Bootcamp, that this is your jam. You can see here we have lots of different options. We're gonna today talk about planning, and we're gonna talk a little bit about starting and registering. While we go, we're gonna talk about what it takes to keep your entity healthy, to maintain it with the state. However, This section is available for everybody. So if you've already registered a business and you're just interested in what do I need to do every year to keep this thing going, to keep its heart beating, this section is for you. It breaks down really easily into the 3 categories of the things you need to make sure you're doing every year. And then finally, of course, it's not a natural progression, but should you ever decide to pivot and you're no longer going to be operating, or the nonprofit is no longer going to be operating, we do have information and step-by-step instructions on how to properly close a nonprofit so that you don't end up being responsible for a bunch of filings and filing fees that are going to keep adding up until those steps are taken. Now that I've gone that sort of Debbie Downer route, we will kick into the Your Plan section. Okay. So this is our nonprofit basics. Like I said, every month we give a workshop on nonprofit basics, and we go a little more in depth into all of this stuff. There's a couple of sections here, there's 9 overall, that I'm going to skip for today because we have experts and really helpful people talking about these things in later sessions. So today we're not talking about tax exempt status. We're not talking about fundraising because those are sessions 2 and 3, right? But we will talk about many of these other things. So I'm going to start in the Your Plan section. And this is about putting together a business plan. And a business plan is important for a nonprofit. It's a roadmap. It's a way to make sure that you're considering how your nonprofit is going to operate. What need is it fulfilling? What is your mission statement? Who are your target donors? You know, what kind of inventory might you need? What kind of space might you need? What's your growth plan? A business plan is going to look different for every nonprofit. It's also a living and breathing document. So it may look very different on day 1 than it does on day 365, and that is okay. There is a template here from our friends at SCORE that you're welcome to use if you're looking for a template, but this should really be something that makes sense to you and the other members of your nonprofit. A business plan is not something you're going to be filing with the state. You're not going to be submitting it to my office for consideration and we say, yep, check mark, you can be a nonprofit. We're never going to see a copy of this document. Most people living outside of the confines of your organization are not going to see a copy of this document. Occasionally, you may need to provide a business plan if you're seeking a loan or if you're going for a zoning variance. So if you're trying to open a brick and mortar location for your nonprofit in a certain municipality, pardon me, then they may wish to see a business plan so that they can determine that it's okay for you to be doing those sorts of activities in that space, and they may grant you a zoning variance. Other than that, it's something you're going to use internally. However, there are many things that you need to make sure you take into account when you're setting up the parameters of your nonprofit. And there's a bunch of those listed here. In that resource packet, that resource guide, there's a 2-pager in there with a bunch of terms as well that, you know, more than just these 4, that's really, or I think is really useful. I did put it together, so I'm a little biased, but it has a whole bunch of terms and what they mean and how they relate to operating a nonprofit that you're welcome to refer to. If you have any questions about any of these things, please feel free to ask in the chat. Happy to expand upon this. But for now, we'll just talk about these 4 items. So the things that the state requires for a nonprofit are directors. So a nonprofit must have at least 3 directors on its board at all times. So in order to register the very first time, you need to have 3 directors willing to serve on your board. Their names and addresses are going to be put on those articles of incorporation. You can have more than 3. You can have a 50-member board if you wish. It's probably not going to be super efficient, but you can. You can have a 5-member board, a 4-member board, a 10-member board, as long as you have at least 3. Skipping down here to officers. A nonprofit corporation should also have officers. These typically consist of a president, 1 or more vice presidents, a secretary, a treasurer. There may be other titles that suit your needs as a nonprofit. Your officers can be board members. However, your officers, you can have one person serving in two roles. So for instance, your treasurer can also be your president. Your president could also be your vice president for some reason, if that made sense to you. However, your president and secretary can never be the same person. So if you're reading that, then you need to have at least two people serving in officer roles there, right? Finally, incorporators and bylaws. So bylaws are the governing legal documents for your nonprofit. They set forth how frequently your board meets, what powers they have, when the elections of board members are, how long a board member can serve, how the funds are to be distributed toward the cause for the nonprofit. They should set forth pretty much everything pertaining to how the actual organization is run. Anything where someone can point to and say, oh yeah, that's the procedure for that. This is the procedure for how we vote to re-elect somebody, or how we vote to vote out the executive director because the membership has decided that the organization is not going in the direction that we want it to. All of that is contained in your bylaws. This is a legal document. It is best drawn up by an attorney, of course, because it is legally binding. You can amend bylaws. There are procedures in your bylaws for how to amend your bylaws. But until they're amended, whatever is in there is what your organization has to follow. So you want to make sure that it was drawn up by somebody who understands the law and who understands the consequences of what those words mean. There are templates online. You can find them fairly easily. If that is the route you're going to go, I just caution you to read them really carefully. Make sure you understand them. Particularly make sure that the the state under which your nonprofit is governed is Rhode Island, or wherever you actually wish to be located. Because if you pull one off the internet and it is from a nonprofit in Michigan and you don't change that and something happens, then everything that your nonprofit is held to are the laws of Michigan, which you have nothing to do with. You've never operated in Michigan. Just one sort of extreme example of why it's a great idea to involve an attorney, if you can, in the process of drawing up your bylaws. Finally, incorporators. Nonprofits have a kind of unique role in law, and that is the incorporator. And this is just the person or the few people who submit the paperwork to my office to register the entity. An incorporator, so if you yourself are interested in starting a nonprofit, you can serve as an incorporator. It does not mean that you own the nonprofit. Nobody owns a nonprofit. It's run by the board, and that board, the members of that board are elected or appointed, and they can be shoved out of that position by the membership as they deem fit. An incorporator, like I said, their role is to submit that paperwork to my office to get the entity set up. The duties of that role last only until the board meets for the first time. So it's really just somebody sort of standing in the gap to create that entity until the board meets and decides to adopt the bylaws that are going to govern the entity. Okay, I don't see any questions on that, which is unbelievable. Either I'm explaining it like so well, or we have shysters in the crowd, which is all okay, all okay. I also want to talk a little bit about partners in counseling. In the welcome packet that is part of the resource guide, there is a list of partners with all of their contact information that you'll have access to. We're also going to hear from several of our friends here in the third session, so they'll be able to give you more of a firsthand account of how they can help. But you should be aware that help is out there, and oftentimes it is free help, whether that is access to grants, like being able to apply for grants that exist specifically for your industry, or mentorship, one-on-one mentorship in your nonprofit industry, someone who's been there before, or workshops on building capacity, or building leadership skills, or finding skills-based volunteers, or drawing in new talent, etc., etc. The list goes on. those resources are out there. I hope that today's session and the other sessions in this series will be instrumental in helping you see the light and see that these things are out there. But I do really want to stress that there are a lot of opportunities out there for nonprofits, particularly new nonprofits, to sort of get their sea legs under them and have that support beyond just your family and friends. We have a question in the chat about, can there be a for-profit entity that comes out of a nonprofit entity? I'm not sure if you're talking about like an arm of a nonprofit entity, or if you're talking about converting to. That's a niche kind of question, I guess I should say. There are entity structures that are social enterprise, where they are for-profit entities that serve a social good. So if you've ever heard of an L3C, a low profit limited liability company, it's a for-profit entity that serves a purpose like a nonprofit does. That might be something that interests you. There's also benefit corporations that do something similar. If you're talking about operating a for-profit arm of a nonprofit, that's going to be a pretty, I should say, beyond me accounting issue in terms of how those funds are distributed to the nonprofit to further the cause, if they are taxed or taxable. I'd say that's a question, and if that's what you're considering, I'd say that that's something you should definitely think about talking to a CPA about before you jump in. Nancy. See, Nancy, our little CPA, our CPA speaker who's going to be speaking tomorrow, chimed in. She'd be happy to speak on that topic tomorrow. Okay, great. Moving on, we're going to talk about the name of your nonprofit. And the name of your nonprofit has to be unique. There cannot be another nonprofit operating by your name or in a similar name registered with our office under the law. And that's going to benefit you because nobody's getting your brands confused, right? If there's a nonprofit operating already with a name similar to one that you're looking to adopt, and maybe they're not doing great work, or all of their Google reviews are 1 star because they have terrible service and they're just rude to their donors, whatever it may be, you don't want your entity to be confused with that entity. So if you have a name in mind for your entity, you should check our corporate database. Remember, that's a record of everything that's ever been filed with us. See if that name is available. We can check for you as well for free. If you ask us to look to see if this name is available, we'll check our records and let you know if it is or is not. If that name is available, please keep in mind that it does not belong to the nonprofit until the nonprofit has registered or filed a name reservation, which is kind of like a holding pattern. The actual entity has not been created yet, but the name is reserved until the entity is created sometime before 120 days later. Until you actually register that entity, it doesn't legally exist, which means you cannot be signing contracts in the name of the nonprofit. You shouldn't be ordering big neon signs or leasing out space somewhere in the name of the nonprofit, because it doesn't exist. You don't own the name, and that entity is not a legal entity until you have gone through the steps of actually registering it with my office. The registration process is super easy. I'm going to talk to you about that toward the end of this session today. But just keep in mind that until you actually do that and you've obtained that unique name for your nonprofit, it doesn't officially exist. So hold off on ordering the business cards until you actually have that registered. Okay. I'm going to skip over tax exempt status because that's something that Nancy's going to go through tomorrow. I'm going to move on to costs and fees. And we're going to talk about only a little bit of this because, again, Nancy is going to go through the tax exemption bit tomorrow. And that's, represented here on the second half of this chart. This is about the startup cost to registering your entity. So if you're looking to register a new nonprofit in Rhode Island, you're going to be filing documentation with my office at the Business Services Division. The cost is going to be $35. That is a one-time fee. It's not an annual fee. That is the fee to actually register your entity and create a little bouncing baby nonprofit. Okay. The tax exemption bit, like I said, Nancy is going to cover tomorrow. So it's here if you want to refer back to this, but I'm going to let the experts take over that tomorrow. In terms of annual filings, once you have registered your entity, so let's say you register, you're the incorporator and you register a brand new entity today. Next year, you're responsible for filing your first annual report with my office. And every year after that, until you actually close the nonprofit and formally dissolve it, you're responsible for filing that annual report every year. The annual report is really simple. It's a one-page document. It's, if you think about registering your entity as sort of giving birth to a bouncing baby nonprofit, right? The annual report is like your physical checkup every year. It's a chance for you to update board members if that's necessary, update any other information about your entity, just make sure that everything's still ticking. The fee for that is $20. Prior to January 1st, 2022, the filing period for nonprofits was between June 1st and June 30th every year. Like, as loud as I can, that's changing now. The law changed this year, and now every entity, no matter what you are, if you're an LLC, a nonprofit, a corporation, everybody's going to be filing at the same time beginning next year. So if you're an existing nonprofit and you just filed your annual report this past June, you're going to be filing it again between February and May this coming year. There is a handout in your resource guide that talks about that. You will receive a reminder from us, just like you always do, saying when your annual report is due. So, don't stress it too much. Of course, the mail can get lost, so still responsible for filing even if you don't get the mail, but we do send out a courtesy reminder to your registered agent that your nonprofit annual report is due with our office. Just please keep in mind that that deadline, the filing period, is changing next year. So every year from January 1st next year on, you're going to be filing between February 1st and May 1st. Okay. Again, Nancy is going to charitably cover the annual filings for tax exemption, which is this Form 990. Tomorrow, and we're also going to be talking about other sort of licensing requirements and funding requirements between tomorrow and Thursday's session. So moving on, but once again, all of this I go over in a little more detail in that nonprofit basics. So if you kind of want a one bite thing, you're welcome to join me. You just do have to listen to me talking at you again for a while. So that's the only downer. Employees is the next thing I want to briefly go over. Again, there's a handout in your resource guide about this, differentiating between employees and independent contractors, or what some people refer to as 1099s. Nonprofits are usually majority volunteer run, which is fantastic and has a whole bunch of advantages, both tax advantages and community advantages. But if your nonprofit is interested in hiring people to help do some of the day-to-day or to focus on specific projects for your nonprofit, you need to make sure that you're classifying the people who are doing that work properly so that you don't end up with an accidental unemployment tax bill or self-employment tax bill or any other sort of workers' compensation penalties for treating somebody as an employee but not collecting tax because you think they are a 1099 contractor. The biggest difference between an independent contractor and an employee is control. And this is all from the IRS's website. You may not believe it, but they actually have some really helpful resources there. Easy to understand. They have lots of examples. We do have links to that, excuse me, down here, talking all about the differences between independent contractors and employees. And that guide, that page in the guide, does come from the IRS. So that's a sampling of what you could see there. But in general, the difference is control. If you think about you hire somebody to plan an event for your nonprofit, maybe you're having a gala and you're hiring an event planner to put that together. You are saying to this person, I'm hiring you as a contractor for this event. I'm not going to be collecting taxes on your behalf. You're going to be responsible for your own taxes on the money that I'm paying you. Here is what I want out of this gala. This is the end result. Here's the deadline. Here are some of the parameters. Here's an inspiration board I put together. Here's my Pinterest board, etc. That person who's acting as an independent contractor is not working 9 to 5 for you. You're not expecting them to use only your office's computer. You give them deadlines, but you're not telling them exactly how they get there. You're only defining the end product. This is what I want. I want this event to be planned in this style. I want this many people involved. This is our, I want you to put together an advertising campaign or whatever it may be. On the other side of that, an employee is someone for whom you have full control over how they do their job and the end product. You can say, you're working 9 to 5 in our offices, you're using our office computer, you're responsible for answering the phone from 9 to noon, and then from 12 to 1 you can take lunch, and then 1 to 5 I want you to be filing and answering constituent emails or donor emails or whatever the case may be. You control how they get their job done as well as what job they are doing. Also, volunteers, just please remember to treat a volunteer as a volunteer, which I don't mean to sound harsh. I do not mean that you should treat them harshly. What I do mean is that as a volunteer, you cannot compensate them in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just out of the kindness of your heart and you have good intentions. All you can do is reimburse them for actual costs. So if somebody travels, so let's say you're operating a animal cruelty society or a nonprofit operating a animal rescue, and part of the job is to transport rescued animals from here to Maine. And you have volunteers who use their own vehicles to transport those animals from here to Maine to their adopted families. They can put in to be reimbursed for the mileage that they used to get to and from Maine, but you can't give them a gift card to grab lunch on the way or say, thank you so much for all the hard work you've been doing. Here's 20 bucks, go buy yourself lunch. Or, I see that you love frogs. Here's a frog stuffed animal that I bought for you, for all my Good Place friends. You need to make sure that you are not compensating your volunteers or being seen as compensating your volunteers, or you may end up in the same situation as misclassifying a 1099 contractor. Judy has a question in the chat. Part-time employees is the same way. It doesn't matter how many hours the person works. If you're hiring them as an employee, you're responsible for collecting those employment taxes and remitting those to the state and to the federal government on tax returns as appropriate. Your agreement with that employee is that they work X number of hours a week or a month or whatever, and that this is what they're doing. If you're classifying them as an employee, then you are responsible for collecting and remitting those taxes. Okay. I'm going to move on for now. I don't see any other questions in the chat, to choosing a location. And the thing I want to say about choosing a location is this may not apply to you if you are not operating a brick and mortar location. However, it's going to apply to most entities in some way, shape, or form. And what I'd like to say about choosing a location is that in Rhode Island, we have 39 cities and towns, and every one of them operates a little bit differently. They're kind of like a kingdom in and of themselves. Let me just pause for a second because I have 2 questions in the chat relating to the employees page. Yes, Nancy mentions that for independent contractors, for 1099s, that you should get a W-9 from any vendors to make sure that you're indicating those correctly on your tax returns. And I'm sure Nancy can elaborate on that if we have questions in tomorrow's session. Diane has a question. Can we give volunteers a gift card? Say they help during an event and we want to give them a Dunkin' gift card. You cannot. So even if it's not cash exchanging hands, if it's not reimbursement for what is reimbursement a word? I think so. If it's not reimbursing an expense that they actually incurred as part of volunteering for your event or for your organization, you can't repay them. You cannot, just out of the kindness of your heart, give them a gift card because they've done a great job and you appreciate them. That's why you need to be creative in ways that you do make those volunteers feel appreciated. You can or cannot provide food and water and refreshments to volunteers. That's a really good question. As long as those items are available to everybody, and it's not a, if you are volunteering, then you get this sort of thing, then that's fine. You know, the people who are being paid as part of your organization and the volunteers all have access to the same catering spread, you know, or you have water available to everybody, not just for volunteers. That should be fine. You're not actually giving them a special compensation for volunteering that day. I hope that answers your question. And for now, I'll hop back over to choosing a location. I do just want to point out that because every city or town is different, if you do need to navigate getting a permit or a zoning variance or making sure that you can operate your nonprofit within a municipality, it's going to look a little different everywhere you go. There is no central sort of database for that. There is no central oversight for what things are called or what things cost. Most of that is held in city or town ordinances. So what I do want to point out is about 2/3 of the municipalities in Rhode Island have either an economic development office or an economic development officer, something along the lines of being called that, whose whole role is to bring business to and keep business in their city or town. So use them as a resource. They're going to help you navigate what are the requirements for you to get the proper permitting or zoning variances for the activities you want to do. If that's not available or for whatever reason that's not working for you, the city or town clerk is going to be your friend. They know everything that goes on in their city or town. So please make sure you're reaching out to, pardon me, your city or town halls directly if you have questions about specific permits or other things that are required for you to be operating in that city or town. Okay, I'm going to skip fundraising because we are going to be talking about that on Thursday. So I'm going to return now. I think we're making good time. This is great. I'm going to return now to this information for nonprofit corporations page. You'll remember we kind of started out on this page before we went into the plan section. We're going to go into how to actually register your new entity. And if you are sitting and listening to me and you're saying, I've already done this, I don't care, that's okay. I hope that some of the things I'm about to say will sort of light a fire in your brain anyway. And for everybody else, I hope you can see how easy it is to actually get through the process of registering. So this is a step-by-step instructions for how to go about doing that. Step number 1 is to make sure you have what you need. Make sure you know the information before you get started. Know the name of your nonprofit. Remember, it has to be unique. Remember, it doesn't exist or belong to the nonprofit until it's actually registered. You also need to have the name and address of a registered agent. And this is a requirement for every nonprofit registered in Rhode Island, whether you are a foreign nonprofit who has first registered somewhere else and is now qualifying to do business here in Rhode Island, or whether you're just getting started out and you want to start your journey here in Rhode Island. Everyone is required to have a Rhode Island registered agent. And a registered agent is a person or an entity that has to be on record on behalf of your nonprofit, and their whole role is to receive legal documents on behalf of your business. So they are the legal point person for your business. We are required to send those annual report reminder notices and other notices to the registered agent. Other state agencies are required to do so as well. Also, should something happen and somebody wants to subpoena records from your organization, or they file a lawsuit against the nonprofit, they need to serve those legal documentation, or that legal documentation, on the registered agent. Your registered agent can be anyone. It does not have to be somebody that has membership in your nonprofit. It doesn't have to be a board member or an officer. It can be your attorney or your accountant or CPA. It can be yourself. It can be your aunt or cousin or best friend, somebody that you trust to communicate with you quickly, because there's usually pretty quick turnaround times on the notices that they're going to be getting. They also have to have a Rhode Island street address, and they have to be available at that address during normal business hours. So if you are using yourself as the registered agent and you work from home, you'll need to put your home address as your registered agent address, because that's where somebody can find you during normal business hours to serve those legal documents on you, okay? Also, please keep in mind, as I said, sort of at the top of the hour, everything you give to us is going to be public information. So if you are serving as a registered agent, whatever address you put down is going to be public information. Perfectly fine. You can serve as a registered agent for the entity as long as you have a Rhode Island street address. But you should just know that whomever serves, their information is going to be public information. Okay. Once you are ready, you have all of that information, you're going to file your paperwork. If you want to file through the mail or bring it to our office, you can fill out a PDF form and bring it in, or you can file online. Remember that one-time fee is $35. It is a pretty simple form. There are instructions in every section that sort of help you understand what they mean. And the reason that we try to put together all of these educational programs is because it's so easy to file these forms. There's a lot more that goes into planning for, starting, maintaining, operating, growing a nonprofit than just submitting this paperwork. And because this is so easy, it makes it seem like it's a piece of cake. I have this document in and now we're rolling, we're good to go. There's a lot more that goes into it. I'm hoping that by the end of this series, that's impressed upon you and that you feel empowered to interact with the resources that are available and to look into things that maybe you feel like you need to know more about. But the turnaround time on actually registering a nonprofit, once we receive it, same or next business day usually. So you're not looking at weeks waiting time. Once you are ready to go ahead and submit it, you're going to have an entity pretty shortly. You're going to have a new baby nonprofit on your hands that you then get to grow and raise as your own. All right, step number 3, once you have submitted that paperwork, you're confirming your filing. So when it comes to the Department of State, no news is good news, and I mean that in a good way. You will not hear from us on the status of your filing unless there is something wrong with your filing. So if there's something that needs to be corrected, we will reach out to you so that you have a chance to correct it. If it's perfect and we're putting a big stamp on it and sending it on through the pipeline, you're not going to be getting an email saying, here's a copy of your filed documents. Instead, remember, everything that's filed with us is available in that corporate database for free. So if you're wondering, you haven't heard in a day or two, you're like, I think that's good news, let's go check on it. Just type in the name of your entity in the corporate database. You can look at all of the filings, download a PDF copy if that's something that you need in your business records. Finally, step number 4 is to get an EIN. And you'll note that this is not something we recommend you do before you register your entity, because remember, your entity does not exist until you actually register it with us. So you can't get an EIN and say, this is the name of my nonprofit until that nonprofit actually exists. Getting an EIN is really simple. It's issued directly by the IRS. It's a 9-digit number that functions basically as a corporate social security number for your entity. So wherever you would normally put your social security number, let's say for if you are a vendor, right, and you are giving that W-9 form to somebody else because they paid you, where you would normally put your social security number on there to identify you, you're instead going to be putting the EIN of the nonprofit to identify the nonprofit. It's also what you'll use to open bank accounts with a bank. The thing I want to make sure everyone is aware is getting an EIN is free, absolutely free, and anyone can do it. It is a simple process. You get a result usually within 30 minutes, maybe actually I think it's like 3 minutes to 3 hours or something like that. It's not a crazy amount of time, particularly if you get it online. There is a link here to go directly to the page on the IRS website to apply for an EIN. If you don't do that from here and you don't go directly to irs.gov to do it and you just Google get an EIN for my nonprofit, the first 8 to 10 results are going to be companies offering to do it for you. And they're going to say, I'll save you hundreds of dollars and weeks of time by getting this for you. Please don't fall for it. Like I said, it's free. Anyone can do it. The lead time is not long. It is not an onerous process. Step number 5 is downloading your welcome packet. And this is something that we put together. There is a copy of this in your resource guide that you have. I think it's the actually very first document in session 1. This is a whole bunch of stuff that we put together for nonprofits. A lot of all of that sort of extra stuff that you need to be considering and thinking about, some useful tools we put together to sort of help you stay on track and to keep you organized. I am personally a little bit of an organizational nerd, as Maureen can attest to. I very much need things to be neat and orderly and all in their place, and it makes me feel accomplished when they are. It's sort of the same, or should be the same, in the nonprofit world. When you're starting a new entity, a lot of new information is going to be coming your way. You're going to be assigned different numbers. You're going to have different people helping you. You're going to have different licensing numbers and, your registered agent name. And I know I need to file this, I think every January or February. And then my tax EIN is this. And I am a 501c3, I think. This business snapshot and annual task list is a way for you to keep all of that information in one place. You can see here we still have the current filing period for annual reports. This will be updated to that February 1st to May 1st deadline once the new year comes along. This document or something really similar to it that you create can be really useful for board overturn, right? So if you have board members coming in and out, either by choice or because they're moved out or because of the way that your bylaws set up your election process, having something like this where you have all the vital administrative information about your entity can be really useful for those new incoming board members to have that continuity of operations and know what they're talking about and have access to the information that they need to be successful. We also have information on, bylaws and business planning, how long you need to keep certain records, when you have to turn them over, keeping your entity bank account and personal bank accounts about as far apart as they can be, a nice healthy bundling board between them. Building the brand for your nonprofit, thinking about intellectual property, trademarks, service marks, which we have resources on that as well. Obviously, no time to talk about it today, but if you're interested in information about that, please reach out to me or email that biztraining@sos.ra.gov email address, and we'll make sure you get information on that, information about insurance, the life cycle of a nonprofit. So starting with all of these different entities, maintaining every year with all these different entities, and then taking steps to close should you decide to do so with these different entities. Information, remember at about 12 noon today, we talked about business identity protection, about scams, about phishing, information on all of that, what to look for, some common scams that may be coming your way. The sort of red flags to look for in phishing emails that I think many of us are familiar with, but it's always good to have a refresher. Information on if you do decide to hire employees, the entities and information that comes into play when you do that. And then finally, I referenced that contact list. state agencies that you may have something to do with over the course of the life of your nonprofit, and then those business support organizations as well, that can help you navigate challenges that your nonprofit is facing, or maintaining or growing, or maybe you just need help with marketing or reaching specific donors or planning a specific event. These are some great organizations that can help you out with that. Okay, so you do all have a copy of that nonprofit welcome packet in your resource guide. Wow, I can't believe I got all those terms correct. Yes, Alexandria asks if we can send a link to the document. You should have gotten an email with it. I will ask Maureen to attach another copy in the chat as well, so you can get it. If we're going to have the session again tomorrow, again, same time, same place. We're going to be talking about accounting, tax exemption. Nancy is going to be answering all of your burning questions. And if you don't have it by then, we'll make sure you get it too. Again, you don't need to follow along page by page as we're going through these sessions, but it does sort of help to make these presentations a little more robust and give you something to bring with you after the fact and refer to when we are done here. Thank you, Maureen. So that is how you actually go about starting and registering your nonprofit. If you'll remember, we have, thank you. We have these resources for maintaining a nonprofit. If that is your wheelhouse right now, it's the stuff we just talked about, right? File your annual report every year. Make sure that registered agent information is up to date. Pay any taxes that may come into play. That's a little more complicated for nonprofits. You don't have, you're not taxed at the corporate rate for the minimum corporate tax, but there may be other taxes that come into play, like sales taxes or unemployment taxes, workers' compensation insurance, etc., that you're required to take care of every year if that's applicable to you. There's also information here on updating your information. So if you are in between annual reports, you need to update your board members, you can go ahead and do that. If you need to order a certificate of good standing, you can do that. If you need certified copies of anything you filed with us, you can do that. We also have information on resources, again, to help you grow. So a bunch of our friends, many of whom will be speaking on Thursday, that can talk to you about what they do offer for you. So that is what I wanted to show everybody today. Again, we are here for questions. We are going to be your sort of guiding light throughout this series. We hope that you continue to ask us questions as we go through. We hope anyone who's joining live today or anyone who's not can join us tomorrow again between 12 and 1, same time, same place. Nancy's going to be our superstar of the day, talking to you all about fun tax stuff. I'm glad I'm not the speaker for that one. No offense, Nancy. Taxes are not my fun zone to play in. Again, any questions you have, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to throw that email address in the chat. Again, it's biztraining@sos.ra.gov. This session was recorded. All of them will be recorded. You will get a copy of the recording early next week so that you can return to this. But speaking of returning to it, return to us, contact us. We're here to help. We want to know what you need. So please give us that feedback and we'll be happy to try to create something like this series that can be useful for you. Thank you all for sitting patiently and listening to me for an hour. I hope that we see you tomorrow, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.